Hold up. Technical difficulties. Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's final front load. Then I'll do Agape, and then I will do the remaining two videos tomorrow because I'm going to be kind to myself today. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. We're going to that horrible world known as the JRC, but before we do, the usual disclaimers. In the description box, you're going to find a link to the article that the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center doesn't want you to read. It is written by NeuroClastic, a small non-for-profit started by autistics for autistics, where they interviewed and surveyed over 900 ABA professionals in regards to the JRC's quote-unquote behavioral modification program. Matter of fact, the JRC doesn't want you to read this article so much they have threatened NeuroClastic with a defamation lawsuit if they did not remove it from the website. NeuroClastic has refused, so you know the drill. Please read that article and share on all your social media. We also have linked in their NeuroClastic's public statement in regards to the defamation lawsuit threat and a link to their GoFundMe. We are crowdfunding folks in case the JRC has the balls to see through with their threat. We got the pertinent links to the Agape boarding school situation as well. Agape Boarding School is a Christian-themed boarding school based out of Stockton, Missouri, that takes in so-called troubled male teens that has, and pending right now, over 21 claims, allegations, and civil lawsuits leveled against it. All claims thus far substantiated by the Missouri Department of Social Services that include sodomy, rape, sexual assault, child abuse, psychological and emotional abuse, child trafficking, and starvation, and that's just for starters. We have one former staff arrested by the FBI, another a doctor still on the premises with full access to the boys, up on multiple, substantiated again by the Missouri Department of Social Services, allegations of sodomy, rape, and sexual assault of the students there. We have an attorney general who can't be bothered to do his job, and a governor who's just has lost his fucking gourd. So please share those articles. Don't forget to share and sign the change.org Shut Agape Boarding School Down petition. We got the pertinent links to the Stop the Shocks campaign as well, including Hoya's massive archive on the subject, the templates, and the ever-present self-explanatory change.org Shut the Judge Rotenberg Center Down petition, a link to Jennifer Masumba's behavioral sheet of shockable offenses, and a clip out of the 7-hour ordeal undergone by Andre McCollins back in 2002. Folks, when we discuss the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of, catch clips of surveillance footage of people with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you have young children present, please use your headphones. This channel is marked not for children for a reason. We use profanity and talk about dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger, parental supervision is advised. Trigger warning, we are about to descend once more into the mad ravings of a lunatic mind known as Dr. Matthew Israel. We're going to hear lies, logical fallacies, gaslighting, victim blaming, blaming the advocates, blaming everyone that's not Dr. Matthew Israel, abuse apologencia. You get the picture. You're going to hear rants. You're going to hear profanity. And just, be prepared for that, all right? Okay, so where we left off, tearing apart his thesis. And I don't even have to put effort in. It's not hard. This guy's an idiot. He shouldn't be in charge of a snail. The post-JRC program may be... No, we read that. We've already broken down how stupid he is and what he doesn't know about group homes or assisted living. That's a long list, by the way. He doesn't know shit. The post-JRC program may be confining or restraining the student. Oh, here we go. Like you don't, doctor. Shall we give the examples again of all the shit the JRC gets up to? You mechanically restrain them by hooking them up to an electric shock device that is designed to hurt them. It's called mechanical restraint. You will physically and manually restrain them to a 4-point board using such unapproved items as belts and handcuffs. Yeah. I've seen hospitals tie people down, doctor. I've never seen them use that shit. Let's see here. You will strap them down with these items to a 4-point board and then use that device to shock the shit out of them. You restrain students, doctor. You warehouse them. Please spare me your bullshit. There are at least 5 cases in which the claim that positive-only programs could handle the JRC students was put to the test and failed. You say we failed to address these. Let's address them, doctor. I'm game. Let's do this. In 1981, Student 1 was removed from JRC and placed in a positive-only program, the Elizabeth O'Hara Law School in his home state of Connecticut. His aggression was too much for that school to handle. Within 36 months, he had to be readmitted to the JRC. Are we going to start with the 80s? Doctor, do you know how many positive programs were out in the 80s? One. That program was not even what you could call the positive only program. That program was ABA, folks. ABA in the 80s also used adversives and punishments. Those punishments would include being denied food. It would be denied if the child was crying and in pain, they would tell the parents to ignore them. Is it any wonder it didn't work? With a program like that, teaching you to ignore your child's fucking pain, when it's teaching you to not give in and reasonably accommodate the child, and then it is a shocker that the aggression got worse and the school couldn't handle it? Again, doctor. Come on, I challenge you, Dr. Israel. Give me a good one. Really try to challenge my expertise. Go on. Give me something good. Student 2. A young man from Massachusetts was removed from JRC twice in 1982 and 1987 to positive-only programs, one of which was the May Institute of Massachusetts, and had to be readmitted twice to the JRC. Interesting, the MDRI cites a paper that prematurely claimed his case as an example of how someone can be removed from JRC and moved to positive behavior support procedures without harm. Here we go. We take you away from harm, but it's actually worse than the harm we put you through. Wow, doctor, really? Again, I bring to your attention, it was the 80s. They had one program. One. And any idiot that calls that a positive only because it doesn't allow you to spank, hit, or fucking torture the kid, that's not positive only. I can't. I literally fucking can't with these people. What do you know about the other programs in the 80s, doctor, since you're wanting to make these huge-ass claims? Positive behavioral reinforcement was in its infancy in the early 90s. Literally in its infancy. It was not widespread. Not at all. It was ABA and institutionalization in the 80s. That's honesty. That's facts. And there is the data to back it up. Okay? Positive behavioral reinforcement, as we know it now, was in its infancy in the 90s. Calling ABA, of all fucking things, positive only? Are you on crack? Are you on crack right now? Because that must be some good shit. That must be talking to Elvis, or maybe talking to a spider who calls himself Elvis. Good kind of shit. Wow. I said, give me a challenge, doctor, not give me more evidence on why you're a moron. Student 3 was transferred in 1996 to a positive-only program run in the Brooklyn Developmental Disabilities Service Organization in New York. Within 2 years, he was transferred back to JRC. Again, I bring you back to my point, doctor, that what you do has psychological ramifications. If you take someone with aggression issues and then put them under hardcore torture, you really don't think that aggression is not going to get worse? Because now they have psychological trauma on top of it. Speaking as someone with a real vindictive streak, particular individuals like moi, when we go through hell and we're taken out of it, do you know what we want? Revenge. We want revenge. That is going to show itself in forms of aggression. In my case, I picked up a full, old, made out of fucking lead school desk that I picked up and threw into a fucking wall in a class full of students. Yeah. See, what you do and the trauma that you cause has psychological ramifications. When we are removed from that threat, do you really think the anger at our treatment doesn't exist? Is it surprising that people went through this hell? We usually have one of two responses with trauma. One of two responses. Extreme fucking anger or complete shutdown. And they're not mutually exclusive either, because I've gone through both. Many of us have. Some of us have only gone through one or the other. If you psychologically traumatize and physically torture someone with years on end with impunity, and then suddenly you're out and you're shocked that they're even more aggressive than before, you're not taking into consideration the role you played in it. And you want to know why they transferred them back? Again, this is 1996. Behavioral positive reinforcement was literally in its fucking infancy. ABA was still the name of the game prevalently throughout the world. And if you're going to call ABA positive only, you don't know shit about ABA. Tell me you know nothing about ABA without telling me you know absolutely nothing about ABA. And if you think that ABA shouldn't make us aggressive or vengeful, you're telling me I can never be loved as who I am, and in order to be accepted, I must pretend to be one of you fucking people for the rest of my life. You really think that's not going to be cause for aggression in me? Really? Have you met me? Just saying. Student 4 was removed from JRC by anti-aversive advocates in 1994 and ultimately placed in a supervised apartment in New York in 1996, run by an agency job path opposed to use of aversives. Within 2 years, he died of self-inflicted scratching that had been well controlled at the JRC. By torture! This is what you don't understand, JRC. You control us through torture. You really think that's not going to have ramifications? Again, I will point you to the fact that PTSD caused by trauma, caused by torture, caused by psychological, emotional, and physical fucking abuse done day after day after day, it's going to have ramifications, especially if the person's autistic. See, we already got severe fucking sensory issues. Okay? When those sensory issues are not dealt with or reasonably accommodated, when you then inflict massive psychological trauma on top of it, when you control through fear instead of actually getting to the root of the issue, providing reasonable accommodations, not forcing us to wear shit, do shit, say shit that fucking harms us as autistic human beings because you want us to be like you. It's going to be ramifications. It is a thing in ABA to make us do things that we are uncomfortable with and causes us severe discomfort. Wear clothes that literally feel like hell. Wool that will cause hives. Hives itch. Hives will have you itch without stopping. For those of you who've never suffered with it. The problem that was causing the scratching, because the JRC thinks they know everything, was never dealt with. He was then removed off of the device that was traumatizing and torturing them. So not only was it not dealt with, he's now put into a school that specializes in ABA that basically makes you do everything opposite of what makes us as autistics feel comfortable, safe. Wear clothes that cause us literally physical pain. And then you're surprised that this happened. Remember, when we go through trauma, our autistic features, particularly the problem areas, I speak from experience from my own life and having worked in the field, doctor, they come out to fucking haunt us. And they are usually amplified and far worse than they ever were before. To pat yourself on the back and break your arm off doing so, but we were controlling it through fear. What part of this don't you understand? If anything, this proves my exact point that fear never works in the long term. Let's read student 5. I said, give me a challenge, doctor, not continue to prove my point. Student 5 was transferred from JRC to the May Institute in August 1994. While there, he set fire and burned down one of the May Institute's residences, subsequently transferred to a Florida program. He is another student who was prematurely claimed as an example of how a student can be removed from JRC and transferred to a positive behavior program without harm. Again, doctor, I will bring you back to the fact that you have no idea about PTSD or how it affects a person. What did I just tell you? Responses for trauma is usually one of two things. Often they can coexist at the same time or hit us at different intervals. If you transfer us from your hellhole straight into ABA, which is really not that much better, the only fucking difference between them and you is that they don't, spank us or pinch us to the point that we bleed or cause massive bruises, starve us, all that good stuff. But they do still teach us to self-loathe. They still force us to mask. They still will not allow us to accept ourselves as our authentic autistic selves, and because they also, like you, doctor, refuse to deal in reality. Suddenly, you're surprised that we want revenge. Coming from someone who, as a kid, literally the only reason when I went through what I did with my stepbrother, that I did not slit my own fucking throat, was the thought of my revenge. That was it. That was it. That's all I fucking had at the time. Granted, later, with years of fucking therapy, I might add, those feelings of anger and all of that were channeled. Not only for my good, but for others. That's how I got involved in the field, doctor. Nonetheless, they're there. It doesn't surprise me that he would set fire to people who are trying to force him to be something other than what he is. Rage, aggression. If you had those issues before coming to the JRC, and then the kid is tortured, traumatized, has his autonomy and self-worth ripped from him, and then you're surprised when he acts out aggressively? Who's in denial here, doctor? Is it us or you? And you tell us, but you point to us prematurely as examples of how it can work. And what, doctor? Guess what? Dealing with people who've lived through trauma is not an exact science, contrary to popular belief. You have people who can live successfully their whole lives. Looks like you're managing everything with your PTSD. And the next thing you know, maybe 30, 40 years down the line, they slit their throats. Trauma's not an exact science, doctor. You did such immense psychological damage to these kids that anger or those autistic features that you never dealt with that have been magnified. You see where I'm going here, right? You see where I'm going here. You're looking at a system, especially early to mid-90s to 80s, that spent its entirety trying to ram square pegs into a round hole. And when that wouldn't work, instead of, realizing that we need to approach this thing different, but then take a knife and then cut off our fucking edges to force us to fit. Okay? It was not really until the late 90s when positive behavior reinforcement started coming out of its infancy, when new programs like the person-centered planning started getting off the ground, that we began to see that there were other ways of dealing with things other than ABA and, whatever JRC calls the horrific shit hellscape that they do. None of these examples that you provided for us, doctor, did anything to me. It did not challenge me in any way. It did not challenge me at all. You said we're afraid to discuss it. I'm discussing it here and now. If you find this small little channel, come on by. Watch this video. Tell me I'm wrong. You can't, can you? It would be very unprofessional of you to do so. We to this day do not begin to understand the ramifications of post-traumatic stress disorder. And you are kidding yourself if you think these kids don't live with it every day. Jennifer Basumba literally lives in terror the moment she hears Velcro. To sit there and say, but it was because of us and because they left these problems happened? No, doctor. That's a logical fallacy easily torn apart by, as my usual, flawless logic. PTSD did these things. You, doctor, caused these things. Because you did not do your job and get to the root issue. You tortured and completely destroyed young children. I'm going to close on that. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few that we do get to get removed from time to time. So please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time. As always, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. I will do Agape's video after this. I'll get the other 2 videos tomorrow. And then I get to sleep this week. Yay! I do hope you all have a good one. Bye-bye.